Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the live show right here at Amuls Vision, whatever y'all want to call me. My real name is Amul. So welcome to the live show right here at Amuls Vision, where we are going to have a party tonight to talk about family court, child custody, divorce. We're going to talk about parental alienation and a few more things. So welcome to the live show right here at Amuls Vision, and we thank you so much for joining us. Now, it's going to be a few minutes before we get started. We have to go over some legal disclaimers, as well as let you guys know what's going on and how we run this program each and every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. So welcome to the live show. And give us just a minute while we're going to allow some people to come in the room. So give me just a minute. I'm going to check some of my equipment. I'm going to grab a water too real quick. So you guys come on in the room. We want you guys to join us. I'm going to grab a water. So welcome to the show, guys. And we're going to get this party started in just a few minutes. This is a live show, so everything that happens is live. There can be all kinds of mess-ups. That's how we want it. We want you guys to know that it's unfiltered and it is not rehearsed. It is a live show. I will be your host, Amul P., formerly known at the Father's Rights Movement, hosting the lives over there. And now we're going to be doing the lives here, and we have a little bit more broader topics, and we can go later if we need to, and we can talk about the stuff you want to talk about. Each and every week, we're always looking for a special guest to come on the show, so if you believe that your story needs to be heard, we would love for you guys to come in our inbox, let us know your story, talk to us, and hopefully we can share that with the other parents out there that are fighting for their children's rights in family court. So welcome, like I said. I'm Amul P, and Richard's going to be joining us. Give yourself a round of applause tonight. It is not easy dealing with family court. I am personally in the battle myself. It's been 3 years, thousands upon thousands of dollars, and it doesn't get better. It doesn't get easier. The weapon of choice for an alienator is family court. And so you guys, I don't have to go deep into it. You guys understand that family court is where the alienator can thrive with lies and get away with perjury and all kinds of other stuff. So let's start with the legal disclaimers real quick. I'm not a barred attorney. We cannot here at Amuls Vision give you guys legal advice. Anything that comes from me is of an opinion of myself or of our co-host, Richard Cross, who you guys will hear from tonight. Exactly that. It is not legal opinion. It is not legal advice. Please don't take it as that. And one more disclaimer. I am not a medical doctor, neither is anybody here at Amuls Vision. We cannot diagnose, we cannot treat, we cannot give you medical opinions, and we cannot give you medical advice. If you feel that you are having a hard night, you can go to the TFRM, which is the Father's Rights Movement. They have an emotional support line. We also have an inbox open here at Amuls Vision where we would love to talk to you if you need somebody to talk to. Let me cut this, hold on. And if you guys need somebody to talk to, you guys can always talk to us in the inbox. Myself, Richard, or any of the other volunteers at Amuls Vision would love to talk to you and hear your story and share your thoughts. And if you want to be heard anonymously, we'd love to have you anonymously heard. So let's talk about family court and divorce. And now I'm going to bring Richard Cross in here. He's the co-host each and every week. We do this live at 9 p.m. Yes, you will hear us unfiltered. Things will get loud. They will get live. And if you're ready for the ride, join us. I'm Amul P. I'm your host. Let me bring Richard in the room. All right, so it's going to make my head all... So bear with us. This is a live feed. You know what I mean? It's live. Anything goes. So give us a minute, and we're going to do a mic check with you guys. All right. All right. Let me go and make some changes. Welcome, Richard.
Evening. How's it going, Amul?
Good. Can you hear me, Richard?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. How about you?
I can hear you. Now,
Perfect.
For anybody, viewers out there, let us know if you can see us in the video. Are we cut off? Do you need us to bring it up or down? Let me know now so we can make those changes. We are going to have a group of... Let me stop for a second. Richard, I'm going over the rest of the introduction for us, but I want to go ahead and bring you in. There will be a group of moderators down here in the comments. If you have questions, somebody will get with you. If not during the show, we will talk to you after the show. So you do have that right to be in this conversation, interactive, and get some information here to help you with your battle in family court. All right, there's the introduction. Richard Cross, warrior.
How's it going, Amul?
Peter. Welcome to the show. Talk to me. What's going on? How have you been?
I've been good. It's been a good week. Spent some time doing a little research on this week's topics because one of them hasn't been relevant in my life for some period of time now. And then the other one I've never had to personally experience. So, I had to look up what people are dealing with whenever they face divorce and alimony these days, because it sure has changed in 10 years, that's for sure. So yeah, either way, week's been good. Just been doing some research for this and work, and that's about it. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I had a long week. You know me, I own a business. I was traveling. I do some DJing on the side to make a little extra cash, something that we're going to talk about tonight that I think all fathers need to be able to go make some extra cash when you're in family court because you have a lot of people going at you. You have guardian ad litems, you have mediators. There's a lot of people that are looking for money, and we're going to try to help you guys on Sundays. I don't know if you've seen it, Richard, but on Sundays at 3 o'clock, I'm going to be doing a mental fitness, well-being check test, and
Okay.
helping nutrition. So that way, you guys can eat healthy, you guys can sleep healthy, and make it through. So let's talk about some of the posts that you've read and I've read this week before we get this party started on divorce, because I know it's a rough topic. But any posts that struck you this week, or things that you were like, hey, you know what? This
You,
post I want to talk.
I haven't seen many posts out there. I think one of the things that I found common across my research is this change of, traditionally women are awarded alimony, but with the recent, incline in women earning higher income jobs, that's starting to flip where maybe men are starting to get alimony in more recent cases there to come out of these courts. And, I don't think I necessarily expected that when I started to read this week. But according to lawyers are reporting that there's about a 45% increase in the number of women that are paying alimony, which I mean, that's a pretty decent size of data there,
All right, so like we said, we're going to talk about alimony. Let's talk about it for a second, Rich. Let's talk about alimony. Alimony is basically spousal support after divorce. And so, you know, back in the 1940s and 60s, I mean, I'm sure that, mostly men were working out there, right? Mostly men
Yeah.
were working.
I'd
Women
say
were the
if
homemakers.
you think about it early on, maybe a woman wasn't working in the household. It was only the man, right? As you stated. And at that time of divorce, there there had to be some way for that woman to be supported because maybe she couldn't go out and get a job as readily as a man could at that time. So it somewhat makes sense, based upon the way a marriage was looked at then, and the way a woman may not be able to go earn as equal to a man at that time, or even maybe not even buy property or different things. There are many things that are factors that were in play at that time that maybe aren't the same today, but it's definitely, well, it has been up until recently, based upon what I'm reading, it has been enforced the same way as though we still live under those same conditions, right? But go ahead.
So some of the issues that we're going to talk about tonight, one of the major issues is I actually spoke with an attorney this week, and one of his concerns was and I told him I was advocating for children's rights, for parental alienation awareness, and to enforce it and make it a crime when it's actually been documented well, and you have proof and evidence, and there's the victim, right? The
Yep.
child and the families. There's a lot of collateral damage. He stopped me and he said, "Hey, Amul, listen, I know that you have a platform. I know you guys talk about a lot of stuff, but I think you guys should touch on alimony." I said, "Well, why? Why would we want to talk about alimony?" He said, "Because in some states, and including South Carolina, they can go from anywhere from 1 month to the rest of your life. And
Yeah.
this is 2024. Wait, let me say hey to Daniel. Daniel Martin is in the building. Daniel, you are an advocate and a fighter for these children's rights. So I just want to give you a big shout out. Thank you for joining us. But let's touch on it. Let's touch on it.
Yeah. So that's one of the other things I read is that they're starting to extend alimony far past the typical working age that was 65. So they're assuming that you're going to work longer, you're going to work beyond 65. So they're extending the alimony payments to essentially accommodate for that. And for this one in particular, they're reporting 58% of attorneys that were polled are reporting that they're starting to see alimonies go further into retirement and start to impact or significantly impact people's ability to
Now,
retire. I
now
find that to be an amazing concept, but go ahead. Sorry.
on average, it's like 40% of your gross income minus the wife's income. And if and I'm just mentioning this, like if he was a UPS worker and she was a homemaker, there's a big gap there. He made about 100,000. He works hard, 12-hour shifts, tired, lifting, and back's blown out. But you know what? He will be forced to pay this alimony for the rest of his life if he decides or she decides to end the marriage.
You know, I have some questions because I'm not well educated in alimony. Do what's the income threshold where you have to start to consider that you could be paying alimony? I mean, is it 100K? Is it
Well,
120K? I imagine
no,
it varies by state.
no, it
What's
can.
the
I
threshold
mean,
here?
you could make minimum wage, get married to somebody, been married to her for some period of time, the relationship ends, and the judge can order not only child support, he can order alimony support, and then he can order for you to pay for certain things because what it is, it's to maintain the same quality of life. All right, so the man worked really
Understood.
hard. He provided a great life for his wife. Now he has to go provide it and until she gets married. And me and you talked about this right before we came on air. I've never been married. I'm not married. You've been down that road. In
Yep.
your situation, there was a child involved, and that's what became the major issue. And in my situation, I have got very close a couple times to wanting to settle down and get married. But then I remember all these horror stories of how these marriages ended, and it was so much worse. It's so much harder to get out of than I don't know if I even think of I can consider it right now.
Yeah, I definitely couldn't advise a young man to get married today, unless there's some law that gives him an advantage with gaining rights or custody to his child because he's married versus not being married. Because in some states, if you're not married, it can be far more difficult for you to get custody of your child and get into a courtroom and gain any type of custody to your child if you weren't married before, which is a whole different consideration to have. But I mean,
You talk to the
in,
average person, Richard, and they're just going to say marriage is a business. I mean, I'm not talking
I
bad
think it
about
is. I mean, how can you, how today marriage is a business? I mean, the reason a lot of people want to get married is because they want to be on their spouse's insurance, right?
uh,
Maybe they can't get their own health insurance, so they want to be on their spouse's insurance. So let's get married. Or maybe you're in the military and you want to move out of the military provided barracks. You want to have a spouse get BAH and be able to move into military single family housing or off base housing, right? You know, in my case, I didn't have to have a concern with alimony because I was a poor little A1C. My wife at that time was a staff sergeant that had just separated from the Air Force. So alimony wasn't even on the books for me. I barely made $600 every 2 weeks or something like that at the time. So it wasn't earth shattering,
so,
our cost of living difference. But either way, there's no way I could recommend if you came to me and said, "Hey, Rich, I'm thinking about getting married. What are the pros to it?" You know, I think she could be on your health insurance. Maybe there's a few tax write-offs, but I doubt you make enough
so,
money to make it worth it. Maybe you do because you run business. But either way, go ahead.
so
I don't see the
here's the
benefit.
question, and maybe you got access to this AI, and we might be able to get the answer. But is a prenup going to protect you from alimony? This is just a question I have. Will a prenup protect you from alimony? For me, as a business owner, as a father, seeing all these cases, I just wouldn't be able to get married at this point without a prenuptial agreement that's going to give an ending to it. Because if there is an ending, I want to know the ending. I'm almost saying in business, it's better to find your way out before you even start getting in to everything.
Yeah, I think in some states you could use it. You know, I'm not a lawyer. I can't give legal
Right?
advice or tell you what to do in that case, but I do believe there are some states where you could have a prenuptial agreement that essentially like avoids any disputes for alimony, such that maybe you're already setting up some type of payment or some agreement to payment, such that the court then doesn't have to rule on that because they already exist. However, you can challenge a prenuptial agreement, right, in court, and you can make that cost money to just have it be enforced. or you could potentially have it removed such that the courts then could rule upon it based upon, the facts of your case and different hearings that they hold. But either way, I think you could in some states. I don't know exactly what states you could or couldn't, but according to the statistics, there's about 62% of divorce attorneys that are reporting prenuptial agreements are being made to avoid alimony disputes. So, yeah, you could.
So,
Um,
but what's the vibe? If and you've been married now, here's my question: what's the vibe of when you talk to your future wife? If you weren't married and you're about to get married, say, hey, can we talk to an attorney about our marriage and if something were to go wrong? Because in a lot of marriages, there is one party that is insecure and that
mhm.
it's a hardship on the entire marriage forever because you have a breadwinner usually, one makes more than the other, and the other person may be insecure. And now you have a marriage that was such happy, blissful, right when it started out, the honeymoon phase, you want to call it, and then boom, everything changes. The behavior changes, the patterns change. You start seeing these masks, they start come off. The word narcissist comes out, but you start
I
seeing
real
different.
quick, real quick. So the word narcissist is just thrown around too much, so much so that it's almost diluted in what we talk about. Because in my case, they see me as the narcissist. I see them as the narcissist.
Yeah.
Depending on who you go confide in, they'll either validate your feelings or they'll challenge them and really make you think about it. I think just, sorry to real quick, I just think that term narcissist is really overly used because both sides are trying to use it to essentially
I,
amplify their argument. And at the end of the day, who cares if there's a narcissist involved? It's
It's
outrageous
it's,
behavior.
it's
But
just it's
either
a
way,
word. It's like saying bimbo or
understood.
something like that.
Yeah,
It's a word. But no matter what the actual word is to describe this character, I just say it takes one to know one. And somebody will probably come after me, but hey, it takes one to know one.
yeah.
If you're to claim somebody's this character, I mean, I guess all of us might have a little bit of narcissist in us, if that's the term that they want to use, because it almost encapsulates every single part of somebody's behavior.
Yeah,
But
well, at any given moment, you could take a small snippet of what somebody's doing and say, "Oh,
yeah,
narcissist," right?
yeah,
And you could very easily point it out. That's all I'm saying. So I hear it all the time. You see the different ads
yeah,
playing up. Are you dealing with a narcissist in your divorce case? Are you dealing with this? And in my head, I'm like, they think I'm the narcissist, but here I am listening to somebody explain to me what a narcissist is, and I'm like, wow, I think that's the other person.
I, I,
But
I want to talk about something a little bit more important that our platform really focus on. It's a little bit more about parental alienation. So we did talk a little bit about divorce and alimony. And if anybody wants, the viewers, you guys want to talk to us in an inbox or in the comments throughout the evening, it is still an open discussion. We can discuss alimony. We can discuss divorce, but we're going to move on, Richard, to parental alienation and growing up and being an adult, an adult victim of parental alienation, because when you're a grown man or a grown woman, you're going to get into the dating world. And the thing is you don't first ask, where's your mom and dad at? That's not the first question. You finally got to meet somebody, get to
mhm,
interact with them, and then you start to see what their childhood upbringing was as the relationship grows.
yep,
So you will see this, and I don't want everybody to get mad at me because I'm saying this, but I see this with people that have been grown, alienated from one parent, that they have a hard time holding good relationships. And it just seems to be if they were raised with parental alienation and it was instilled in them, it's so hard for them. And now let me finish this. Ready? It's so hard for them to accept the truth because they've been living the lie that was sold to them. And how would you feel as a grown adult to go against everything you were taught? Whether it was your dad wasn't around, he didn't care about you. Now remember, the alienated child who's now an adult, this is what we're talking about, Richard, an adult child, it's hard for them to say, my dad was around, because remember, the alienator made it their job to keep the father or the mother away. And
mhm,
now that is the truth. That lie became an actual truth because the father wasn't there, not by choice, but by the way that the alienator programmed the child. So we can't even blame these grown adults who were suffering and victims from parental alienation as an adult, because I see it in the dating world as myself, where I've dated women that they don't even have a relationship with their dad. They don't know him. They're angry with him. He's a piece of he's a piece of junk.
yep.
But the truth is, they never had a chance to know who that man was. what's your take on adult parental alienation, being an alienated child and then
You know,
growing up?
once you're an adult and you were a victim of parental alienation throughout your childhood, first and foremost, nobody cares anymore. Once you turn 18, the court doesn't care anymore. Your case doesn't matter anymore. Maybe they're still trying to collect child support if there's back child support, which has nothing to do. I mean, finances, I think alimony, I think child support, things like that can play into parental alienation. And I think it can also cause the other parent to alienate just to be able to increase their ability to gain money through those avenues. So I do think alimony and child support play into parental alienation in some cases. But when you talk about an adult that's been alienated for many years, in my mind, there's going to be nobody there to support them. It is really going to be on that child to figure it out. And depending on the degree of the alienation, they might be dependent upon that other parent for the rest of their life. And once that parent is gone, they're going to have to face some hard reality of, if they're not mentally stable due to the alienation, to trust people and be able to put trust in other people, how are they going to continue on? How are they going to
So,
form relationships with not just a spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, with any general person that they need to survive in life? And I'm really basing this off of a recent case that I've been looking at myself with another father. And I'm gauging the level of parental alienation in his case as I read through the messages. And the
but
level of alienation that's occurred, there's no recovery,
but
even in adulthood, for that child.
but let's take this in a micro before we go into the whole macro of it. Let's talk about the age that it can begin. At how young, in your
Oh,
opinion, first, can it start? Now, just let's be realistic, because we're not going to attack anybody, but let's say, what
yeah.
is the age an alienator can begin the alienation, and what age do you think that the child has the freedom to make their own decision, whether they change or whether they accept or understand that it happened to them? At what age can the alienator begin alienating a child, do you believe? And at what age does that child really have freedom? Because each state, 12, 14, 16, when this child can talk. And all I've seen is a lot of children running away from home, missing children, missing people, because they don't want, they running away from the people that held them hostage. A lot of times, all they have is the alienator left.
Yeah, I'm in the state that my case is in. There is no opportunity for the child to speak unless the judge agrees to it. So there's no set age where we should take the child's opinion. So states that do have that ability, I think it could be beneficial if the child is a little more aware and has trustful avenues to be able to speak up. And what I mean by that is therapy that is not done in front of the other parent, the alienating parent. I think that's very important. I think having a best interest attorney that can communicate with the child without the alienating parent or other parent being there is very important. And then a lot of times, I think the difficult piece is when there's one child, it's a lot easier to alienate that child than when there's two children or there's three children. The age it can begin, I think it varies based upon the competency and mental development of your child. The minute you're able to manipulate your child through any type of behavior, they're susceptible to parental alienation through many tactics, and there can be many ways for that. It could be as simple as not allowing phone calls. It could be as simple as cutting phone calls short. It could be as simple as the comments you make to the child based upon why a phone call might end, why a parent does or doesn't come to pick you up, or who knows what the scenario could be. But there's many ways
Yeah.
you can alienate a child in the way that you talk to them. It could be even just the way you support a child's language. So when a child is talking back to you, or a child is talking to you about their experiences with that other parent, how you as the parent choose to support those comments, and how you as the parent choose to reflect those memories and those moments onto that child is also
So,
the ability, or opens up the ability, for alienation. And I think that's where you see it most often, and it's the hardest to document, it's the hardest to put down on paper, because it's an interaction with the child that is in no way documented such that you could bring
so
it into a courtroom and say, look at this.
let's rewind just a minute, because it's a super interactive show. We had a comment that was really interesting, and Sam Jenny said that it can start from birth because they have skin to skin contact. Now I want to go a little
Yeah,
on
I would
that.
agree.
So I want to say this. We have a new answer for it because I can agree with her. Could you agree that it can start from the age, the day the child is born? If the parent, one parent holds the child so much more and keeps the other parent kind of at bay, or doesn't
Hmm.
allow the other parent to nurture the child's needs, they automatically become dependent. So I'm going to agree with Sam Jenny in our comments here. And I love that you guys are interactive because that matters. I'm going to agree. So it can start from birth.
I do agree.
And so what age do we really, and my son, my older son is 23, and he wasn't a victim of parental alienation, but what happened is as he got older, because there was a custody battle, he didn't get to see the other side of the family as much, right? Because we went through a whole court battle, and I
Hmm.
won custody. I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. He didn't get to see the other side of the family that much. It was a long, expensive battle, and I wanted to spend time with my child. As he got older, he was ready to go. I mean, he lives with my mother now, but at the end of the day, he was ready to go because he felt like he was a victim. Now, for my end as a father, I was protecting my child from a family that obviously I won't get into it, but their other child is in jail right now for shooting somebody or shooting at somebody. There's another kid that's in jail for drugs. There's a lot of things that happened bad with all the children in that family on
Hmm.
that road. Where I kept him harbored, sheltered, and protected. He ended up going to college. He has a good life. He's got a good job. But at the end of the day, he still feels like a victim of parental alienation, even though he wasn't. But I'm just saying this, family court was what instilled and started that, because at some point the family court drew a line. Instead of allowing us to co-parent or interact with each other, they created a war zone that made two families not really care too much for each other. And so I want to blame that alienation on the court being the instigator and the person who continued to help it. But today I have a good relationship, but it took almost 5 years, 6 years for us to rebuild a simple relationship, to eat and see each other and hug each other.
So I do agree. I think it can start at birth, right? If one parent has that full access at a young age, it's obviously going to create a bond that the other parent doesn't develop. And that can be hard to overcome because it's going to create trust and foundation with that one parent
Right.
that they're not going to have. So I do agree it can start that early. Um, though that's where I think you really get into the are you married or are you not married in a lot of these states, and trying to understand what your rights are as an unmarried man to your child versus a married man to your child. And it's kind of sad, but in that regard, the mother's definitely going to get that time, right, a lot of the time, because she's birthing a child, and there's typical things that go into that just life experience that is having a child for a mother. So it's tough to overcome those type of alienation tactics. But it does develop alienation in a way, but I see it more once a parent is actively engaging in verbally communicating with the child in an alienating manner, whether it's responding to how the child talks to them or how they talk about the other parent to that child. I think that to me is when you really call it for what it is, and it becomes something that the court should be aware of and the court needs to recognize is going on in your case. I think it's very hard to prove, though, kind of the alienation that would happen at a very young age, right? With that child
Right.
just naturally developing a relationship with that parent that it is
Now,
with. Not to say the court shouldn't make that equal, right? Or that time equal. It's just there's a natural bond there. And that natural bond I'll look at as it's alienating, but it's not the, it could be, but it's not the parent outright using
now,
essentially words to alienate that child,
now,
if that makes sense. So.
now I'm going to talk about some of that. I told you I was going to quote some of these people on some of this. When it comes to dating in this, when you're married, there is a paramount war clause. If you were married and you are in the middle of a divorce, they separate the child custody and the divorce right away. So if you go to a lawyer's office and you say, I'm fighting for custody and I'm in a divorce, it's almost like two separate cases. So you've got to really look at it like this. If you were married, and this is my opinion, I don't want it to be taken for legal advice, then you can argue the paramour clause. You can argue that you don't want your child in the same house with a parent of the opposite sex. Now, if you are married or you were married, then I don't think it's going to play a factor. So if you're going in there and you think I'm going to go attack this woman or this man for having a boyfriend or girlfriend around my child, I'm going to be honest with you, leave it alone and go find another argument, because it's not going to matter. If y'all weren't
Mm-hmm.
married and y'all and now she's got a boyfriend, he's got a girlfriend, it doesn't matter. Just leave it alone. What matters is the kids. What matters is you having time that's quality with the kids. But for some reason, the courts just don't care. They don't care to make
Yep.
as much time. Let's just, and even if you're 6 states away, the court should try to create an environment where when the child is out of school, they can spend as much time with the other parent, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to combat parental alienation, in my opinion. Because one thing that the alienator is doing is trying to get as much time, and that time is used to alienate child, used to separate, used to say, oh, well, dad doesn't love you. See, dad doesn't care. Dad can't do nothing for you. He's so far away. Or mom is not good
Yep.
for you. Mom doesn't love you. But the truth is, these moms and dads do love their kids. There's nothing they can do because the court didn't support parenting. The court actually supported alienation. The alienator and the person who was the best liar in family court, the
Yep.
perjurer, the criminal.
In reality, the court gave that other parent a piece of paper that says, see, look, I told you they weren't a good parent. I told you they don't do this. I told you they don't do that. The piece of paper is right here. The court said it, right? And I find that to be interesting because the court does add fuel to these flames, 100%. They allow these false claims to come in. They allow alienation to occur, and in reality, they full on support it and operate with it. I mean, without it, they would almost not need to exist, right? It gives them their relevancy. And then furthermore, you mentioned long distance parenting plans, and then you mentioned school. And I think I told you very early on when I first started talking to you, I see public school as a problem to family court. It works in direct opposition to any type of 50-50 parenting when two parents don't live in the same county. You're guaranteed, if your kid is in public school, one parent is guaranteed 70%, the other one 30%. And if you don't live in the same county, right? And you're not right there where you could do every other weekend or something. And even if you do every other weekend, it's still roughly a 70-30 split in the end. But public schools, in my mind, they almost instantly set what is to be parenting time and a parenting schedule. And then once that split happens, that 70-30 split, once a parent has more access 2/3 of the time,
And we'll just knock the rest out.
you're at a disadvantage. You've already lost. Whatever you say, whatever you do, if you don't call this time, this day, if you don't remember the sporting activity they told you nothing about, if you don't remember the doctor's appointment that they didn't tell you anything about,
Yeah.
it's on you. And
Especially significant moments like award ceremonies or graduation
yeah,
ceremonies like that. Those kids remember that moment a lot. A lot of times you remember your kindergarten graduation. That might be one of your first memories. If you really think about it, if we were to ask that question to the children that were alienated, what was your first memory or your earliest memory? I want to say that parental alienation will damage a child's complete history of recollection of themselves, because when they think about their first grade graduation or their first field trip in second grade and their mom went with them or their dad went with them, but the other parent couldn't make it, so the other parent didn't get to go to Washington D.C. or the other parent didn't get to go to California, and that's a fuel for the alienator. So I'll agree with you, Richard, on that. I'll agree. uh, Public education has harbored parental alienation and encouraged it, and the government makes money off that as well. Now let's go into that a little bit, because here's the thing. Post-COVID, we talked about this. Post-COVID, you had a lot of court cases that were done via Skype or Zoom or different types of internet access to do these court cases. Today, I know a lot of parents that their children are taken out of school and they do e-learning. So these children no longer go to school. They do, turn in some
right.
assignments or things, but the majority of their education is now done on computers because of the fear of COVID, the fear of sickness, illness, or bad
Yep.
behavior. Because if a child is displaying negative behavior, acting out, being a disruption,
then they might send them on suspension, or they might send them to homeschooling. And when
Yep.
they're at public schools that are homeschooling or e-learning, they don't care that there's another parent that could actually interject themselves and make a difference in that moment of that child's life. And it could change the trajectory of that child's whole life. But for some reason, courts and public schools kind of work hand in hand. One hand washes the other.
Well, there are definitely two government entities that support each other in their efforts to essentially destabilize families, because that's what they're doing. I mean, at the end of the day, for them to pour fuel onto the fire of false claims whenever they come into a courtroom,
Yeah.
for them to wildly accept protection orders, silver bullets, as they call them in some cases, it's astonishing, and like I said, I've been talking to a father recently, and I've been reading on his parental alienation, and it gets to the level where the mother knows this child is suffering mentally. I mean, she is communicating with the child about hallucinations the child is having and about intrusive thoughts, they call them, and never communicates this to the other parent, never says anything to the other parent. And then when the other parent realizes this and tries to seek care, he is essentially chastised by the court and told that you're doing nothing but trying to circumvent this court's power. Thereby, we're going to strip all your rights to your child. And I mean, that was it. And the alienation was as clear as day. All you had to do was read the first page of the chat sheet. You didn't even have to read the whole 115 pages that this man has. And they supported it 100%. They accepted the claims of the mother. They completely ignored parental alienation. They left a child in danger, a child that was talking about and suffering in danger with the other parent, and they left them with that parent. They
So,
completely said, we're going to ignore anything and everything about what is the best interest of a child just to uphold
for,
the claims of it was almost confirmation bias by the judge. He got the information from the mother's attorney, and he just looked for anything he could to confirm what they said. And once he did that, it didn't matter what alienation was going on, what the mother was doing with that child. It was over for that father. It was
and, and,
over. He had
and
no chance.
a lot of parents will argue this, that there's a huge problem with immunity for the guardians, the DSS workers, the judges. There is so
Mm-mm.
much immunity
I tell
that
you, I'll tell you real quick how crazy this one gets. This one gets so crazy that another state felt the need to enact an emergency order to help this father get care for his son. And when the other court did that, the court that did have jurisdiction over this case completely ignored what that court said and only saw it as essentially a question of their authority. Somebody trying to circumvent that court's authority. They didn't give a shit about the care of this child and apology. They didn't care about this child. They didn't care about the best interest of. There were actually two children, but one was severely being alienated,
so
severely. And
when the court gets it wrong, there's no repercussions for
no. The
them.
court didn't get this
Nothing.
wrong. The court did not get this wrong. Let's be very, very clear. The court did not get this wrong. To get it wrong means you read the evidence and maybe you missed a minor detail or you just couldn't see the story.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't that case. This is a complete ignoring the evidence and upholding the claims of a particular
So,
party in the case and alienating, allowing a child to be actively alienated to the detriment of not only his health but the health of others around him, all because they felt that a father was questioning their authority. They said, forget the best interest of a child, forget the fact that he's being alienated, forget all of this. Why are you challenging our authority?
So we're going to talk to Chris, and that's what I believe you're talking about. We're going to talk to Chris in a couple of weeks about this in his case. And it's a little bit more detailed, so we don't have much time to touch on it deeply, but it does kind of go with this, so we will touch on it. But we'll talk about that and tell the viewers later tonight where they can watch this episode, and he's going to actually come in our studio live. So we're going to talk about that, but he has a good relationship with one of the children, and the other one was severely, basically the child was punished for
The
no
child
reason.
was punished. I mean, not
The,
the child. The child isn't just punished. the child is going to suffer the rest of his life due to this, right? You talk about how does parental alienation affect an adult child? I mean, it could be many ways. It depends on how mentally developed that child is at that point in time
Right.
in which they have to go start doing things on their own. Because they could, I mean, sure, they're 18, 19 years old, but they
Mm-hmm.
could still be mentally 14, 15 years old because nobody challenged them to grow up or taught them the basic things you needed to know to grow up and become an adult that's emotionally stable and able to partake in society and have relationships with other people, whether it be an intimate relationship or just a friendship. There are
I
certain things that the dependencies they learn from an alienator and the dependencies they grow on an alienator aren't things that you get from a typical person in a relationship. So at some point when that alienator no longer has a need to alienate that child because there's no longer a custody battle, there's no longer a court case, there's nothing going on. It's just, hey, you're with me now. So there's no benefit to fighting to keep the kid with you. So the kid is useless to you. Now we get into that term narcissist where, okay, you're no longer valuable to me. So now it's back to being about me. And then eventually that about me fades off, that individual dies. And now that child is left there trying to figure out how they develop and form relationships at a point when they should already be halfway through forming some of the most critical relationships that a typical person might have in their life, whether it's getting married, having kids, or just in general, friends, work life balance, all these kinds of things, right? And some of these kids will never get to have this because of what one parent does to them and what the court enables them to do to justify or allow them to justify their actions to that child.
And I've actually heard of a couple cases, I won't go into these cases today, where the children have grown up and sued the biological parents. I have seen this where the children have sued the biological parent, one of the
Yep.
parents, for the alienation, and actually have won a large settlement. And it's not about the money, it's the fact that they took something from them that nobody can get back, which is time. You can't buy time, you can't buy love. Everything else is a Visa or MasterCard. And excuse me
Mm-hmm.
for my French when I say that, but there is money does help and solve a lot of problems, but you can't buy the love and the time back. So when you say quit whining, there's a lot of parents that are out here fighting, and people say, well, quit your whining. Oh, you just need to chill out.
Yep.
Everything will be okay. The kid will grow up. No, they don't understand the pain that the alienator is doing to the child. And the child is saying, the parent is saying, I'm trying to protect my child from further damage and harm because I want my child to succeed. And I know that my child will not be able to
Mm-hmm.
succeed if this continues. So to anybody who says, oh, well, why'd you have a baby with that guy or girl? Or why did you do this? When they go backwards, the people like us that are fighting for parental alienation are talking about right now. We want to change this right now because there's not a tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be yesterday gone.
Yep.
And when yesterday is gone, we can't fix that. We have to go back and find healing. So there's a lot of women I've dated that are in a phase that they haven't healed. And there's been a lot of times where I've had to say, hey, listen, I need a break. This just doesn't work because there was a lot of issues that I saw that they have been alienated from one parent. And now it's hard for me to keep a relationship because of what they're going through and they haven't healed. So
Yep.
it's hard to tell somebody who thinks they're perfect or graduated college that you need help.
Well,
You need
how do you go back and get that relationship, right? So say you get married and a marriage doesn't work out. That's an easy relationship to go rekindle and kind of build with a new person potentially. You can't do that with a parent. You can't just go find another father at 25. You can't just bring your father into your life at 25 and act like you've known him your whole life steadily, right? That it's a bond that should be formed over time, that once time's passed there's no time to get it back. And I'm all for, the best day to plant a tree was yesterday, but there's always tomorrow, right? You can always plant the seed and start the process, but that tree is never going to be as fruitful. A tree takes 10 years to be fruitful. You're going to have the same concept in a relationship. It's going to take years to be fruitful, even if you gel, even if you're like, man, we're two peas in a pod, because that's your child and you just have half of you in that child. So we get along so great. We like and do everything together. There's still going to be an emotional connection that has to happen that's more than just the physical or material part of a relationship. And that's the part that these children are suffering. a parent is getting short-term gratification out of long-term traumatization of a child. And to watch a grown adult find their emotional stability in a child versus providing the emotional stability that child needs is probably one of the saddest things that I've had to witness as a father myself. And then as I put my neck out there and I try to call these fathers forward so they can talk to me, I had to have a reality check myself. You mentioned Chris Gray, and we'll talk a little bit about his upcoming show on June 12th here soon. I had to step back and humble myself when reading these messages. And I have the same judge as him. We've gone through a very similar lawyer in the region with the opposing parties. So there's a lot of similarities. But when I look at his case and then I compare it to mine, I have to step back and say, you know what, Rich, you don't have it that bad. You don't have it as bad as this man has it. And the judge didn't do to you what he did to him. He wronged you. He really wronged this man. And it's blatant. It's right there in front of you. It's not even just me trying to plead that, hey, this is going on. Hard evidence. So these courts are upholding parents victimizing their children.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to say this. Listen, one of these things that should be given is called the first right of refusal. Now, if a parent is going to drop their child off at a daycare, if a parent is going to drop their child off with a babysitter, the first right of refusal actually does solve this. There's no reason why a child should spend 8 hours with somebody other than their biological parent if they're available, if they're fit, able, and willing. So the courts are taking due process out, and they're saying that these parents are not fit, able, and willing until they prove it. So you don't take this drug test, you don't take these classes, you don't take this anger management, and this can be ordered by somebody that has nothing to do with the case. They've only known you for 15 minutes, and that's the 15 minutes you got to pour your heart out. Oh, well, he's crazy. She's crazy. No, it's a parent just like any animal out there in the woods trying to protect their child and their baby. You will see that in anywhere. I don't care if it's a snake on the ground or if it's a dog. If you go to touch that dog's pups, that dog is going to protect its pups. If it's a newborn pups, it's going to protect its pups. So here we are in a guardian's office, in a mediator's office, while the alienator is enjoying spending your money, enjoying financially harming you. So even though it looks like they're trying so hard to make this work, they're actually trying so hard to make it not work. And you said it best. They really some people have got it wrong, and then there's people like us that have said, hey, you know what, I don't have it as bad as some other people. In my case, I have 50-50 equal custody and equal no child support, and I'm just fighting to hang on to that. I've been fighting for 3 years, over $40,000, and it's not going to end. I don't see it end. But what I did was I came to terms, Richard, I want the viewers to know what I'm saying. I came to terms that there's nothing I did wrong. I know I'm a fit, able, loving, willing father. But what happens in that courtroom is based on somebody's feelings for the next 3-4 days, and they're going to make a decision that will affect my child for the rest of its life. I can only pray to God, and I can only support and talk to people like yourself and the viewers out here to get some kind of healing, because I know I'm not alone. So that's my take on it, is that we don't control the family courts until we all together stand up and say, hey, not now, not later, not later, now. Let's stop. We need the first right of refusal now. Parental alienation should be a crime now. My child should have unlimited access. There should not be a protective order that stops me from contacting my child at any given time for the rest of their life, the same way the child should be able to contact. The alienator is only wanting that because that's their job, to alienate the child, to harm the child, to hurt the child.
And a lot of times it's how they make their money. I mean, to be honest with you, there's a financial incentive attached to having the kid more than the other parent. In most of these states, there's a percentage in child support that's based upon the parenting time that you have that child. So there's a financial incentive to get your child out of that individual's care. And then if you really have such a shallow ego about yourself that you couldn't handle the other parent potentially talking to the child and you not knowing what they're saying to that child, then you really have to keep them out of their care, because if you're not there to supervise, or you're not there to see that visit, then they don't know what could happen, and they assume you're going to attack and disparage them because, well, that's what they're doing to you. So if you're alone with the child, that must be what you're doing to them. The key
The,
piece to all of this, though, is the court allows it to happen. The court accepts these filings. The court rules on these filings before having a hearing, before hearing the other side. And then in regards to what you said about the first right of refusal, you know, I think that would be hard in a high conflict or high conflict case, right? Where
but
parents
maybe
can't
they're
agree,
making it high
mediate
conflict.
anything. Yeah, but here's the thing. They are making it high conflict, but how do you communicate that often, right? So is this on like an on the fly thing, or is it where we're
No,
understanding that, hey, you're going to have some days off coming up and we want to do a flex schedule? And I'm not challenging the presumption. All I'm saying is the more you have these high conflict cases, the more you require communication in the execution of a parenting plan, the more you're asking for things to be challenged and difficult. And it shouldn't be that way, but you have a
but
party that's making it that way. And then real
but
quick on to further that, every time you leave this courtroom, 50% of the people are happy with what just happened. 50% of the people are wondering how the fuck did this just
uh,
happen?
you can't
Uh,
cuss.
How did this just happen? Right? They're trying to figure this out, right, and understand. That's why when we talk about change or we try to convince people to have change, there's 50% of the people walking out of the courtroom with you and with me saying we're happy. We think what happened was right. We think that you shouldn't have had those rights. We think they should have been taken away. Or in your case, you should have had to show up and speak for why you should maintain rights to your child and why you should be a father. You know, it's
So
hard to win.
so we can make rest areas and the government can fund rest areas and rest stops, right? So why can't we have safe exchange zones for first right of refusal? Why can't we have a place where if you live 15 to 20 miles from your child and they're not going to be around Wednesday, then there's a place that y'all can meet up that if they got school resource officers, I'm sure we can have one officer, do this safe exchange. So that way this high conflict custody exchange can be a little less conflict or a little less stressful. Now,
10
you know what I
percent
mean?
of all 10% of all legal fees collected for family court cases by lawyers in your county should go to funding, an officer to provide that service. If you're going to write that into law, make it to where the family court attorneys
Give
have
me
to pay
one
for that
second.
service. That
Give me
way
one
they're
second,
they're
Richard. Give me one
persuaded
second.
to use it.
I got my kid coming home right now. Hold on. All right. My
And
baby
just
is
to
actually
just
coming
Sam,
up.
speak on what Sam Jenny said. You're right. A lot of times they do require that you do it in the parking lot of the police department, such that something happens. The response time is they walk out of the building in most cases, depending upon where you live. But you're correct. They do. Yep, a lot of those are required that it be done at the police department. So I find that to be difficult in a high conflict case where you're going to get that to. I don't even think you're going to be able to get that request because how do you know the parent needs to contact you for that care versus just calling
I,
grandma or somebody, right?
I
So
have it. I have it, and it's enforceable. See, this is the thing, Richard. The first right of refusal is enforceable by the powers of contempt. It has to be.
understood.
Listen, no, and I don't mean to cut you off, Richard. You have to have this. Here's why. Because you can hold the other parent accountable and it is a violation of law. Once a judge
Understood.
signs a final order, Richard, it is now law. So now you have the powers of contempt to protect your child and you. So yeah, let's say they drop the child off with somebody and you get wind and you find out that your child was over here for 7 hours with your son's friend because he's 7 years old. He's going to tell you where he was on Thursday night, right? You got the proof. Now you can file a rule to show or contempt action and you can go and hold that person accountable for the violation of law and they can be put in jail. They can be fined thousands of dollars and they will stop if they get enough fines or if they go to jail or anything, whatever happens, if the court will enforce it, that's why the first right of
Well,
refusal is so
let's just talk
important.
about it real quick because Sam brings up a good point. Wait 4 to 9 months for that law to be enforced, right? And that's true, right? I filed an enforcement of parenting time because my daughter wasn't put on the plane in time for winter visitation in 2023, right? Or 2022 technically into 2023. You know what? The court didn't set a date for the hearing for 4 months, about the same timeline she mentions here. And then even when the court did have the hearing, so much time had passed, they didn't care. It didn't matter to them any longer. So that's the thing. If you're going to have these mechanisms to hold people accountable to these orders, the order needs to be looked at as what we're going to maintain and what the base level of requirements that need to be met, right? And a lot of times it's not looked at like that for one party. That's an enforceable order upon one party, not both parties in most cases, especially when you're dealing with parental alienation and a parent that doesn't give a shit. I'm struggling tonight. Doesn't care for what that order has to say, right?
This is why it matters, Richard. Listen to what I'm saying. A universal law for first right of refusal is important, whether it's exercised or not. It's enforceable, and you can actually show the pattern of parental alienation a lot better. Now, in Texas, Robert Garza got a law passed called Senate Bill 718, and that is time taken, time back. There's also Penal Code 2503, there's a code, Penal Code 2503 in Texas. Now, that holds, it is a civil infraction, also a crime, and enforceable by law enforcement for custodial interference.
Yeah,
so you have this.
Well, you got to remember, custodial interference is a difficult one because you typically, not legal advice, but you typically have to get the district attorney to be willing to prosecute that. And 9 times out of 10, the district attorney is not going to be willing to prosecute it unless it's severe.
That's why
they're going to redirect you to the family court, right? And I think what Robert Garza is doing with Texas, I think I said his last name right there properly, but I think what he's doing is amazing. I think the time taken, time back bill is a good starting point, but let's see how it's enforced in practice. I want to see it put into practice and how it's enforced.
But listen to what I'm saying, Richard. Once it's signed into law, and this is what we're working on here at Amuls Vision right now, once it's signed into law, it is enforceable by law enforcement. So whether the solicitor or not, listen, once it's a law, you can actually hold accountability. Without these laws actually being passed and these laws being made, they can just do whatever they want to. Now, they won't and they can't when there's a law that says, did you violate this statute, right? If you violated this law, but so many times, now what I'm saying is they can be held, even though you lost 4 months, even though it's 9 months. Listen,
how do I get those 4 months back, Amul? How do I ever get those 4 months back?
It's not, but when this story is written.
And if I, real quick, hold on. If I want to get those 4 months back, how much money do I have to go spend to get the court to take action?
I get it. I have the same situation, and in my case, personally, I can't go into details because it's still in litigation. But the fact is, for a lot of parents that are alienated, all they have is the story of court records and reports to give their child when they get older, because those children are so far alienated, they have nothing left but a bunch of court documents saying, listen, I went to court, I filed, look at this date, I told you, your mom didn't bring the child here, or this or that. This is all a lot of parents have, is boatloads of casework, paperwork, lawsuits.
I have 12 3-inch binders sitting in my closet. I'll take a picture of this and post it just so you can see that it's not a joke. I got a stack of 1,200 papers, right?
This is just some of my paperwork.
Right.
This is one of like 5 boxes. What I'm saying is, for a lot of parents, they may only have this left because they may lose in family court, even though they're not a bad parent. And then they have nothing but this story. And what they want to do with their child is say, at least if I don't get anything else and I do get a moment with my child and they want to know the story, I want them to know that daddy or mommy didn't give up on you. It was a system that failed you, and we can agree together as we end this show, is that it's not us parents that's a problem. It's the system that is supposed to be in the best interest of the child has failed our children miserably, and it continues to do so. And until we get upset, until we speak up and we stop taking it, we're not going to see change. So whether it's 1 law at a time or 100 laws at one time, we got to work together in each state, each county, each city, to raise awareness. Just recently, I don't know if you guys know, but some people may follow me, I was a former DJ. I went on a tour and I said, hey, I need to get a few dollars for court. I'm going to go do some DJ gigs. I did some DJ gigs, and I spent that whole entire tour from Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, every state that I went, I stopped and I made sure whether I was in a restaurant, a place to eat, whether I was somewhere on the beach, I talked to somebody and talked about parental alienation. I said, hey, listen, I'm a parental rights activist for children's rights, and I want to speak to you about parental alienation. And I stopped and I talked to I think maybe 30 to 40 people throughout my journey in those different cities and states. I created some contacts, so when I go back, I want to have a louder voice, someone that will support me. If all of us would do that, all of us would reach out to somebody and continue to grow, whether it's here at Amuls Vision or somewhere else, we will be heard nationally on a greater level. Because right now what you have, and me and you talked about this before the show, Richard, you have a lot of advocates that have issues, and so they won't support each other. That I don't support them, they don't support us, blah, 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 blah. But until we all get on the same page that the best interests of our children is us stand together and work together, because we got to make people understand how to co-parent better. If the laws don't change, we've got to make it to where, hey, the alienator is going to get alienated eventually. We will alienate the alienator
Yeah.
eventually
Well,
in
here's
society.
the thing. We're all fighting parental alienation. Let's not be activist alienators, okay? We don't need to hold each other from the other one. We need to find a common voice that says, we know this is messed up. We know the family court's not ruling in the best interest of children. We need to bring what they're doing to light and force the courts to change. And I think Texas is doing a lot from what I'm seeing, primarily from Robert Garza. I do like what he's doing there. I just want to see it enforced. I want to see the judges hold accountable, and I want to see it not cost the father $10K to go get that done, or a mother $10K in that situation to go get that done. I want it to be a fine. I think I read it was like a $500 fine on person for one of the statutory ones. I think that's great because that's harder to fight. It's a real fine right there on the spot for that individual that they have to pay, and then they have to go fight. So it's no longer on the other parent to fight. I think that's amazing. But I want to see it be easier for these parents to maintain a active parenting plan that is truly in the best interest of the child, and that the courts aren't allowing one parent to exploit. Because I can be mad at the lawyer, I can be mad at the parent doing the alienation, who I'm also should be mad at. But when the court allows that filing to get through and takes action, erroneous action on it, before even understanding or even knowing the full depth of a case, and even when they do have that chance, they only look to confirm what is being filed by a particular party in the case. It's an uphill battle, and we all need to fight this together because we need one voice, regardless if you're monetizing, not, whatever you're doing with your platform. The message has to be the same, and the request for change has to be the same, and it needs to be demanded so that children, not parents, children, not me as a parent, not you as a parent, the children involved in all of these cases can have both parents build meaningful relationships and be set up for the best future that they can when their parents aren't around, when the other support systems start to break down, because that's how life works. We all age, and the younger you are, you're going to go a little bit longer than me. So I have to make sure that you're prepared to succeed beyond me. And
that's
it's not
one of the
fair.
reasons. And we'll end on this note. That's one of the things that we're saying at Amuls Vision, is that we have to bring awareness to other parents to understand, even if you are not a victim, if you see it, it's almost like you need to say something. Because even if we're not around and somebody's alienated a child, they can say, hey, man, the dad wants to see the child. And it may be that girl's best friend. It might be that man's best friend. It may be a spouse. But if they would say, hey, listen, I just don't think it's in the best interest of the child. They don't need a court right now at that second. That husband or that wife spoke up and stood up for the child and said, hey, listen, just let little Johnny go with dad or mom for the weekend, because we got plans anyways, and we don't need to drop Johnny off over at grandma's and hide. It would be better that if we can just drop him off. So I'm saying that from us, and I mean, this is my personal opinion, that we bring awareness to other parents so that other parents will stand up for the children. If we have enough people standing for the children, the laws, you can have the laws or not make the laws, like you said, 4 months, 9 months, all the money, all the time, you lost it. But if there's enough people that understand what parental alienation is, the warning signs, the symptoms, and the problems that are affected long term to our children, then there's people in society that will start standing up and they will see change. Because in your case, in my case, I won't date a girl who will alienate the father. I said this in a post. I can't date you if I don't know your baby's father and I can't be friends with him. That's a problem
Yeah,
because I want to be able to be a change or a difference in that child's life. If I'm going to be a stepdad one day and I'm going to marry you, let me be a voice and reasoning for this child. You guys might have high conflict, but I'm not this child's father. I'm not this child's mother. I'm not the person that makes that decision, but I can tell you if I'm going to be your partner, I don't want to see parental alienation. I don't want to see you use this children as a weapon and harm the child because I won't support you. I will walk out the door if I see that.
right.
And if there's a lot of other spouses that will do that, we will see some change without the laws being changed.
Yep. And I luckily don't have to worry about that. I'm married, have two sons with my wife,
Mm-hmm.
and we're very happily married. We do a lot of things to maintain a healthy marriage
Right.
throughout all of the things we're dealing with the court system. But you know, I I agree with you. If I was thrust back into that world, which I will not be, um, I I would definitely verify if that spouse has a child, then you know we're not going to play the alienation games from our side. And I would be very clear about if it's a father that is fighting to be with their child and is constantly trying to do what's right, and the mother is just in insistent upon that they're not doing what's right and they're not doing exactly what the mother wants them to do, not what truly is in the best interest of the child, then
Yeah.
that would be some hard conversations about, hey, you got to self-reflect and understand that you could be supporting your child better in this situation. And then if that other parent fails, let the child recognize that failure and communicate about it, and you just support them in that moment. Doesn't mean you support their verbiage, their language, or how they may talk to you about it, but you support them in understanding how that relationship could grow or how it could develop, or understand that other parent situation without the need to demonize, villainize, or essentially disparage that other individual for your own gain in the emotional attachment with that child, right?
Right.
But
And for all the parents who have spent sleepless nights drafting your papers, talking to other parents, listen, don't give up. You're not alone. We're here. I know the show's got to end here because we've kind of gone over, but
yep.
we're going to be here Wednesdays at 9 p.m. with Richard Cross. And
Oh yeah.
and this show isn't about agreeing on everything. Listen, we're okay. We've talked about it several times. We can agree and disagree, and this is what we need to do. If you'll look around at some of these other parents that are fighting, and their cases are well known, like Cash Jackson or Jason D'Souza, those people that have alienated them don't even want to have a debate. And sometimes the best thing we can do in life is have a debate and let other people decide for us, because it's
Yep.
okay to disagree. And Richard, we've had a couple of disagreements, and that's okay. And
Yep.
that's the way you're going to see eye to eye, by learning each other's views and values. And maybe it changes the other person's opinion, or maybe we actually understand someone else's perspective.
Yeah.
So,
Real
um,
quick before we drop here, I want to mention June 12th, we're doing, June 12th, Wednesday, 9 p.m., we're doing a live, and we are going to have Chris Gray on. We're going to be talking parental alienation on that one as well. He's going to be sharing some story with you that I'm telling you, will drop your jaws. Like
drop your
yeah. Apologies, jeez
drop
Louise,
your
I can't say it. I can't say
jaw.
that. Yeah, drop your jaws. Like it's insane. I don't even know how else to explain it, and we're going to delve into the details. We're going to give examples of alienating language. We're going to give exchanges of conversation that are examples of alienation, so that you can see how erroneous these courts are when they rule on these cases, and how boldly they will ignore the claims of parental alienation from one side of the case just to have confirmation bias for the other. But either way, June 12th, 9 p.m. He'll be live in studio with Amul, so you'll get to see him sitting there next to Amul, and we're going to have questions for him in regards to his parental alienation case, and we're going to allow Amul to react and hear you guys react in the comments. It's going to be a great story, so please tune in June 12th.
So for the viewers, again, that's one more time. June 12th, Chris Gray will be out here. Get your Kleenex ready. It's a jaw-dropping experience, and it is going to blow your mind. It
You
is a
you
story.
won't need tissues. You might want to sign up for anger management the next couple of days, because I mean, just reading through it, I was infuriated. I'm mad about my case. I completely lost track of mine for about 3 days while reading through his because of it. So yeah, you won't. I don't think you'll need Kleenex. You'll probably be very, very appalled how a court comes to these decisions. So
I ordered some stress balls to give away, so we'll give those away soon. The Moore's Vision stress balls, so you guys can remember parental alienation and keep it in your minds of awareness. And if you're having a bad day, so we will get those soon, and we'll start mailing those out for free. There's no charge. You don't have to do anything. If you're a viewer and you want a stress ball, we're going to be sending those out. Again, let me close this out here, Richard, because we're going to go over 15 minutes. But we do a prayer each and every week right here on the Moore's Vision, and we'd like for you to join us, even if you're not Christian. I am a follower of Jesus Christ and a loyal follower of God's plan. So if you're not and you're Buddhist or you are Muslim, we respect your religion, all religions here. But we're going to pray. So let's pray for just a moment for all the children and all the families affected. Dear Lord, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this time here on Amuls Vision. Thank you so much for your love, Lord. We just pray that you protect and you provide the love necessary for our children that have been alienated or are being alienated now. Lord, we pray that you watch over the fathers, the mothers. We pray that you touch these judges, these lawyers and attorneys, that they may understand what the word best interest of the child is. And it's what is in your will, Lord, is in the best interest. Both parents matter. Lord, we pray that you continue to provide, protect, and love us as we go into this battlefield for our children as warriors in these courts, these cities, and these states, and try to make change, not later, Lord, but now. We ask that you make this change and you bring your love and make these changes now. Amen. Thank you
amen.
so much, Richard, for joining us, and I'm going to close this out. If you want to say good night or
Yeah,
anything.
thank you. Have a good one. Talk to you guys next Wednesday.
Amen. All right, Richard Cross is awesome, and I hope you guys had a great, entertaining hour, and it's informative, and you guys had a good time. This video will be up on the page. You guys can watch it later. It is live, so you guys even seen I had a knock on the door, and that's what we wanted. We wanted to be unfiltered. So we hope that you guys can join us each and every Wednesday with Richard Cross and myself, Coach Amul P. I will be hosting a Sundays at 3 o'clock with you guys for a mental health and well-being checkup. I'm going to give you guys some tips on financial, physical, mental, and emotional. And I hope that you guys will join me there Sundays at 3 p.m. Good night, guys. And until next time, stay strong. You're not alone. We love you. Please stay strong. We'll see you next Wednesday at 9 p.m.